There is a very specific kind of exhaustion that comes from being the person who never says no. You know the exact feeling I am talking about. It usually hits you late at night or in the quiet moments of the morning when the noise of the world fades and you are left alone with your own drained battery. You have done everything right. You have accommodated everyone. You have bent over backwards to be reliable, to be easygoing, to be the one people can always count on. And yet, as you stare at the ceiling, there is a heavy, hollow ache in your chest. You wonder why you feel so entirely empty. You wonder why it feels like everyone else is allowed to have boundaries, to have bad days, to be selfish, while you are permanently on call. It is a lonely realization, looking around at the life you have built and realizing you have given away all your energy to make sure everyone else is comfortable, leaving absolutely nothing for yourself. We fall into this without even realizing it. I call it the trap of being the nice guy, or the endlessly good person, and it is almost always paired with its shadow companion, which is the agonizing wait for closure. These two things are intimately connected. We give and give and give to keep people close, to prove our worth. And when those same people inevitably hurt us, take us for granted, or pull away, we freeze. We trap ourselves in a waiting room, hoping they will turn around, acknowledge our effort, and give us an explanation. We wait for them to close the loop that they left open. We operate under the silent belief that if we are just agreeable enough and useful enough, we will finally be safe from rejection. But safety that is built on abandoning yourself is not safety at all. It is a hostage situation. And the hardest part to admit is that you are both the captive and the guard. I remember exactly when this finally broke me. A friend called me late on a Thursday evening. They were moving out of their apartment, things had fallen behind schedule, and they were panicked. They asked for a quick favor, just an hour or two of heavy lifting. My body was already aching from a long week, and my mind was craving nothing but quiet. But the moment the question was asked, an automatic reflex kicked in. I smiled into the phone. I said, "No worries at all. I am on my way." That quick favor turned into a grueling 6-hour ordeal. I carried the heaviest boxes down 3 flights of stairs in the humid night air. I swept the empty rooms. I managed the logistics while they sat on the floor, stressed and distracted. I drove home at 2 in the morning, my muscles burning, my eyes heavy, but feeling a quiet, familiar sense of pride. I was the reliable one. I was the good friend. I told myself that this is what love looks like. Then came the next morning. I woke up, poured a cup of coffee, and opened my phone. The very first thing that popped up was a story from that same friend. They were out at a beautiful brunch spot, laughing with a group of people, glasses clinking in the morning sun. There was no message to me, no text saying, "Thank you for saving me last night," no message telling me to get some rest. They were simply moving on with their joyful weekend, while I was sitting in my kitchen, physically depleted and emotionally discarded. In that split second, a very cold truth washed over me. My sacrifice had not meant anything deep to them. My exhaustion was not a currency that bought their profound respect. It was just convenient. I was convenient. When we engage in chronic people-pleasing, it often masquerades as kindness. We tell ourselves we are just generous or empathetic, or that we simply enjoy helping others. But underneath that polished surface sits a terrified inner child. The behavior looks like selfless giving, but the fear driving it is usually a deep, unhealed terror of abandonment. We harbor a quiet, devastating core belief that our inherent self is not enough to secure love or attention. We secretly believe that we have to pay for our space in people's lives with favors, with total agreement, with our own physical and emotional exhaustion. And the emotional cost of this transaction is incredibly high. It is not just a tired body, it is the slow, toxic buildup of resentment. Resentment is the emotional tab we keep when we give away pieces of ourselves that we simply could not afford to lose. We get furious at other people for taking so much, but the deeper, sharper pain is the anger we feel toward ourselves for offering it to them on a silver platter. You see this pattern in the smallest corners of your life. It is not always about moving heavy furniture in the middle of the night. Sometimes it happens at your desk. You see an email pop up at 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. A coworker is asking you to look over a project they fell behind on. You already have plans, your bag is packed, and you are exhausted. But before you can even process your own frustration, your fingers are typing, "No problem, send it over." You swallow your entire evening just to avoid the momentary 10-second discomfort of letting someone down. Or maybe it happens in a group chat with your friends. They are planning a weekend trip, and they choose a house rental that is entirely out of your budget. Instead of stating your limit, instead of taking up space and admitting that you cannot afford it, you send a smiling emoji and say that it looks perfect. You spend the next 3 months quietly stressing about your bank account, losing sleep over money, simply because you could not bear the thought of being perceived as difficult or ruining the mood. You betray your own reality to protect their comfort. After that morning with the coffee and the Instagram story, something inside me finally snapped. I did not yell. I did not start a fight. I just pulled away. I stopped initiating conversations. I stopped offering my weekends. I stepped back, secretly expecting them to notice the massive void I left behind. I expected them to chase me, but the terrifying part was that they did not even notice. The friendship just quietly faded into a ghost town. And that is when the second trap opened its jaws. I started waiting. I waited for the text asking if I was okay. I waited for the sudden realization on their end, the heartfelt apology, the moment of clarity. I waited for closure. I spent weeks taking showers where I had imaginary, profound arguments with them, explaining exactly how much they had hurt me, picturing the exact look of devastating regret on their face. I paused my own emotional life, holding my breath for a person who could not even thank me for moving a sofa, expecting them to somehow provide me with profound psychological healing. We do this because the human brain absolutely hates open loops. We crave an ending that makes logical and emotional sense. We view closure as an event, a final cinematic conversation where all the misunderstandings are cleared up, where the other person finally sees our worth and takes accountability for their blindness. But waiting for closure from someone who lacks self-awareness is like returning to an empty house and knocking on the door, hoping someone will finally answer. You are outsourcing your peace to the exact person who disrupted it in the first place. You are asking for a product they simply do not have in stock. When you find yourself checking your phone, agonizing over why they have not reached out to explain themselves, I want you to pause and hear this clearly. You are not pathetic for wanting an apology. You are not weak for wanting things to make sense. It is actually a deeply beautiful thing about you. It means you hold your relationships to a standard of honor. It means you care about the impact you leave on other people, and you naturally expect the people you love to operate with that same level of care. Your desire for an apology is just your own inherent self-worth trying to speak up in the dark. It is your soul recognizing that you deserved better. The only mistake you are making is asking the person who dropped you to be the one to pick you back up. If you want to step out of this cycle, you have to start fundamentally changing how you communicate, starting with the architecture of a safe and grounded no. You do not need a grand, dramatic excuse to decline a request. You do not need to over-explain or apologize profusely. We do not over-explain because we want people to understand. We over-explain because we are begging for their permission to have a boundary. You only need a short, clear statement, and if you have the capacity, an alternative option. You simply say, "I do not have the bandwidth to take this on right now, but I can help you brainstorm other options tomorrow." Or, I cannot help you move tonight, but you can borrow my car for the afternoon. When you stop over-explaining, you stop giving them room to negotiate your limits. You state your boundary not as a request, but as a fact of nature. The second shift is learning to close the loop yourself. You have to realize that closure is not an apology. Closure is acceptance. It is looking at the cold, hard reality of how someone treated you, looking at their silence, looking at their lack of effort, and deciding that their behavior is all the information you will ever need. Their inability to value you is their limitation, not your performance review. You do not need them to admit they were wrong in order for you to know that you were right to walk away. You give yourself closure by accepting that the bridge is burned and deciding to build a house on your side of the river. And if the words are still choking you, if the unfairness of it all is still burning in your chest, you have to find a way to let it out without handing them the power to reply. This is when you sit down and write the unsent letter. I did this in the weeks after my friendship faded. I took out a notebook and I wrote down every ounce of anger, every feeling of betrayal, every silent "how could you?" I wrote down how exhausted I was. I poured the entire heavy burden onto the paper. And then, I did not fold it into an envelope. I did not send a carefully crafted text message. I tore the paper into pieces and threw it away. Because the words were never really for them to read. They were for me to release. I was not communicating with them anymore. I was finally communicating with myself. The very first time you say no to someone, it is going to feel awful. It will feel like you are doing something terribly wrong. Your heart will race, your palms will sweat, and the guilt will spike sharply in your chest. I need you to let it. That guilt is not a sign that you are a bad person. That guilt is simply the growing pain of your self-worth expanding. It is the friction of your old survival mechanisms breaking down to make room for an adult who respects themselves. And the first time you stop waiting for an apology, the first time you look at the silence and decide to just walk forward anyway, you will feel a strange, quiet lightness wash over you. You will realize that you were never truly trapped by them, or their selfishness, or their lack of awareness. You were only trapped by your own hope that they would eventually change into someone who could see you. You are allowed to be a deeply good, generous person who also has a heavily locked door. You are allowed to leave questions completely unanswered. The story of your healing does not end when they finally understand what they lost. The story ends when you finally realize you do not need them to.